Thank you, Gail and Angela, for joining me today. Since you're twin sisters, not everyone probably knows that. I'm curious about how you divide up your work and what you each bring to this project.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we're identical twins here in Bundaberg. And so Widebay Kids, I pretty much lead the business development and community research or analysis of what's happening on the ground. So I usually am the one out engaging and talking to people, listening and learning and collecting insights and really trying to understand from the experiences of people living in our town and from organisations, so that they're looking for opportunity where we can maybe help with the work that we like to do.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
Angela?
and I'm more behind the scenes, on the ground, focused on like coordinating the strategies, using the community development approaches that we use in our place-based activities. So as sisters, I think we've developed a good working rhythm. Gail's more big picture, I'm more detail. And together, I think we just trust each other. We know, what each other's role is. So, and we just learn and build on our strengths as individuals.
Great. Okay. So I've been watching your journey from Welcome to Bundaberg towards building a full community connector program. And what really caught my attention is how you've approached this through your steering group process and that governance model that is emerging. And for our impact network, I think there was some real lessons here about building that foundation properly and making sure that it's on solid legs. So that's where I'd really like to dive in today. So to start us off, and I'll leave it to you too. I'm sure you've worked out who's going to answer what. Can you tell me about your journey from Welcome to Bundaberg to where you are now with the steering group, and what made you realise you needed something more than just what Welcome to Bundaberg was doing?
So way back when in 2021, I started writing my master's thesis on attracting and retaining skilled workers, specifically dentists, because that was the field I was working in regional Queensland and using Bundaberg as my case study. And what I found was a mountain of literature pointing to what the community's role in workforce attraction and retention and success was. And so what it was telling me was that rural recruitment wasn't just about getting people to a location. It was about what it takes to make them stay. And that's when I discovered your work, Cath, and the Attract Connect Stay research. And I was, citing that work in my research, and it really backed up what I was seeing locally on the ground. And when I was talking to people, that community-led place-based approach, it consistently led to better recruitment and stronger retention outcomes. And so the kind of idea formulated from there.
Yeah, and I think then that kind of got us, thinking in terms of what we were currently doing, what we were currently working with under our Widebay Kids organisation, and how we wanted to really help not just in that attraction and retention of skilled workers across Bundaberg, but also helping them feel like they belong. That was a huge part of what we were already doing with families that were already living here. So we knew that we wanted to help those people who weren't just looking for a job in our community, but were looking for a place to call home and were wanting to be part of our community. So that's when we started to produce all these local resources. So we started off with a Welcome to Bundaberg magazine, which helped to make those people feel like, they were coming into a caring community who supported them. We had our social media accounts, our website, and just sharing local stories and community updates. So something that was real and relatable to people who were new to Bundaberg.
Okay, and so when did you start the Welcome to Bundaberg initiative?
So 2023 was when we did our first, we sort of launched the website and initiated that magazine. And we really quickly realised that Welcome to Bundaberg was more than just a promotional platform, which we had originally kind of led ourselves into, but it was more of actually a system change model that was led by the community. And those insights have kind of been what's happened over the last 2 years. For us, it was about really shifting the environment and the culture and even the behaviours of people living here, how locals accept and assist new people when they arrive. And we really wanted to truly embed that culture. So it was also about how we attract that investment into our community, how we build those trusted connections just beyond recruitment or attraction and service delivery. But the problems that we were facing weren't just as individuals or organisations. What we were hearing was it was actually a systemic problem. It was a system problem. And no single organisation could really fix what we were seeing that problem was. And so that's when we knew we really needed to go bigger and deeper with our engagement to really understand, well, this is actually what we've been doing somewhere else in other parts of Widebay Kids, but how can we bring those learnings? How can we bring those lessons from the research and the evidence into something more?
Okay. And was
Yeah,
that,
and
did that realization happen before or after you met me?
I think that came after. Yes.
Right.
yeah, I think the idea of the steering group came out of that too, you know, having that core group of organisations or individuals who needed a space where, you know, coming from all different angles, but they could all come together to formulate a common or shared purpose, and to actually start designing together our Bundaberg solution. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And when you decided you wanted to move to implementing a full community connector program, as you had Welcome to Bundaberg running, what made you choose to start with the steering group as the first step? You could have started with funding, or you'd have just started. So tell me why.
I think the lessons from being part of that, the Community Connector Impact Network, the network that you ran, and I could really see, talking to the other organisations and other people who were already doing this work in other regions, what that steering group meant to them in their spaces or didn't mean to them. So lessons learnt from their successes and failures. And so we knew that if we were to launch into a program straight away, it might look really good on paper. It might look like we know what we need to do, but we didn't think it would stick. It didn't feel as though it would be sustainable because we knew that we needed the community activity to actually own the whole process, not just come along after the decisions had been made or the program had been implemented.
And I think that's how we've always worked with Widebay Kids. It's always been a really collaborative approach to how we work. We weren't or don't see ourselves as the leader in the room. We're one of the players. So I guess creating a steering group gave us the opportunity just to stop and pause and really listen and understand what everyone else who was engaging with us around it was saying, and able to, you know, develop those really early on things that are necessary for this group to be successful. So a shared needs statement, why are we sitting in the room? Principles that are going to guide us in how we want to work together. We knew from past experiences, you know, working together collaboratively in community, that if we don't get that foundation right, then the the group won't be as successful as it could be. So we've really purposely slowed down and spent a lot of time doing those things.
Okay. And I'm just going to jump in here. And can you tell us how you have established that steering group? What was the call to community that you made? Was there anyone that you were specific, or any sectors you were specifically wanting in there? And then we can talk about where you're up to with your steering group. But yeah, if you can, and how much time this has taken to get to the point you're at today.
Yeah. So that it was really important to us that it was a whole community mean, so that everyone who wanted to be involved could be involved. So essentially we did a call out on our social media for a expression of interest. We had a really explicit question that we asked. I can't remember exactly what the question was, but it was something around, if you're, interested in a whole of community approach to attraction and retention, we're looking for strategic thinkers to come together to help solve this problem in Bundaberg. It was something around those lines. And there was certain, I guess, people in our community who were already kind of championing the work that we were doing. And so we really leaned into those relationships and said, hey, we'd really like you to be a part of this, or who do you know who could make a good fit or should be sitting at this table? And to be honest, it didn't feel like that was a lot of hard work, but I think that collectively we've done a lot of hard work to get to the point where we could just put a call out to our community to say, this is what we're doing. We see a need here, who wants in? And I think from memory, Angela, you might remember more, but we had like nearly, 15 or 16 expressions of interest come through.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And so that like the people that we knew would put their hand up did, but then there was other people who we didn't have an existing relationship with, that we didn't even know, that were kind of like obviously seeing it somewhere, had been following along with the journey, who were like, yeah, this is really needed, let's do this together. And so they jumped in at that point as well.
Okay. And have you made the decision, were you particularly are you going to focus on healthcare first, or you did a broad call to all industry?
We did a broad call from memory. Still, like for us in the background was always, because I had just come out of kind of health sector, and that's where my history had been. But when we started talking about it more broadly, there was other voices in the room that were saying, actually, it's construction, it's all of these other things as well. Ag, it's everything. So we just opened it up to see what would fall through.
Okay. And in Bundaberg, what will you say is the absolute essentials that you need representation you need sitting around your table?
I think it's really important that we have not so much worried about industry, but more what the person represents, I think, is an important point. I like the mix of people that can have something to offer, and can really lean into their own experiences. But it may not necessarily be a current experience. So, for example, we've got someone sitting in that at that space who used to work in council, but they don't actually any longer work in council, but they've got a really great and broad knowledge of economic development and what it means in the community. So to me, that's really valuable. And then we've got other people who used to work at a really high level in healthcare and in primary healthcare. So to me, that's not currently their core focus, but they've got a history in that space. But broadly, someone representing education was something that we looked at, and healthcare, and then someone representing council, because we want to make sure that what we're doing is aligning with the current priorities for the region. And so ensuring that happens was important.
All right. And is your primary health network involved in your steering group?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what sort of capacity are you looking at that? Maybe you'd like to just briefly speak about how the primary health network has helped you in this space.
Yeah, so back in must have been 2024, they supported us to join your network, and so to really learn and gain that knowledge and experience of being part of the Community Connector Impact Network, and then that kind of relationship with the CCQ or PHN has really developed from there, really understanding, well, where are their needs and what are their priorities, what are we learning, and what is the community saying? And so they have a seat at that table as well. And we had to work out, because we had so many EOIs come in, and when we first met, we had all these people. We had to really work out, well, who is our core group, and then what are those other rings of engagement look like? And so we have a core group at the moment of I think 5, 6, 7 people. And then we have kind of like an outer ring, which are our essential stakeholders. And we kind of see the PHN sitting in between those two layers, because they are such a valuable resource. They have such a really broad knowledge and an extensive network and of people that we can leverage their experiences and data. But they're not predominantly in our community. So they just sort of sit and float in between. And that's what those essential stakeholders in that second ring from the core group are all about. For us, it's about them being able to step in and out when needed and available. And then you've got another layer out of that, which are people that we just keep informed, we keep them updated. We want to ensure that we're working alongside any work that they're doing, so there's no duplication or overlap, and so on.
Great. All right. Fabulous. So your steering group's been established for how long now?
We first came together in December last year.
And can you walk us through what you did, in how many meetings you've had, what you've done, and what you're actually doing in those meetings and where you're up to?
Yeah,
and just before we start, am I like the PHN? Am I sitting in between those two rings?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you're one of those people that can offer those really insightful. You've got the evidence base that strengthens the conversations and the perspectives, different layers of perspective. And so when you're there, you're there. But then when you sit out and step out when needed too. So you move in between, and that's why it's this really flexible structure. So it's not a hard board where you've got a 7-member board and you've got so many members. It's not like that.
Right. All right. So yes, where you're at to the meetings you've had.
So we started December last year, and it was a meeting with about I don't know, there was a lot of people in the room, and part of that was just listening to what they thought was needed, just more about for us it was about trying to work out whether they were the right people for the core group, and really at that stage we didn't know that we were going to have a core group and then another layer and then another layer. It was just, let's bring all these people together, let's get them to answer the calling question, which was the question Gayle was talking about before, and then let's just see where things fall. So from that meeting, we definitely left that meeting realising that there were people in the room who needed to sit further out, and then people in the room that were, that core group, because they had that higher strategic level type thinking. So from then, we've met almost monthly, maybe let's say every 6 to 7 weeks. We've met since December last year, and we've consistently had the same people coming each time. So around 5 members each time. And the whole purpose of these meetings have been to develop the group. So work out the purpose of the group. Why are we meeting? What are the needs in our community? How do we build a foundation that's going to lead us to running a successful, attention and attraction and retention strategy? And we've been doing that using participatory methods. So things like the chaotic stepping stones, which is a type of participatory process you can use. We do a lot of group decision making, so that decisions aren't just one person or one organisation's role. So it's the whole group that makes the decision. So it's called the diamond of participation. So we put stuff out, we sit in it for a while, and then we converge again, and we come back to the pointy end and make a decision. So we use a lot of those sort of processes. So meetings are very much like, we might do drawings, we might do a lot of sharing of stories, we might sit together in pairs and discuss, and then feedback. So it's a lot of participatory process, I suppose.
Great.
Do you want to add anything, Gail?
Yeah, there's no PowerPoints or endless agendas that go into these sessions. We sit in circle. We really ensure that it's a safe space where everyone in the room feels heard, and that they leave knowing that their contribution and their input is helping shape what happens next. So really building the trust and relationship.
And are they impatient for things to get going, or they understand the importance of this very sort of systematic way of building your governance?
Yes. I actually think we've been really lucky in that. I don't know how we managed that, but maybe that was because we knew the people that needed to be part of the core, maybe. Gail, would that be right?
Yeah, because I think that definitely in that first meeting, we identified there was people who just want to go straight to action, and that's not the pathway that we like to sit in. And that's, coming from our community development background and that theory U, where we like to sit in the U, and we want to make sure that the purpose is intentional and meaningful before we actually go into action. We've been part of too many projects in the past where groups have moved too quickly into action, and it's just not sustainable. And it's where there's ambiguity and misunderstanding happens. And so really taking the time. And I don't think it was lucky. I think it was intentional. I think that the people that we've brought together are the right people at the right time.
Okay. And I think you've often heard me say, Gail, that it'll take about 2 years, this development phase. How do you feel you're progressing on that 2-year mark?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're definitely, almost. So it's almost been a year. I think you're right.
And it might be another year.
Yeah.
I think that's to do it right, to do it and get all your foundations right, and understand how to work as a collaboration and what it is that you actually want to work on. All of that takes time, longer than you could ever imagine, but it is all based on community development principles and working with the strengths of the community rather than its, although we know the problem is a deficit one, the strategies are not, they're strengths-based. So what do you see as your next steps, and what would you tell other communities wanting to establish a CCP?
So I think, next steps, once we develop our group more and get past, and Angela will talk about governance and things, but working out, once we've got that worked out, it's about the group deciding, well, what are the initiatives that reflect what we've built so far, and what are the things that we need to do deeper community connection, like the community connector engagement or the sector-based workforce activities, whatever happens from there. But I actually think that that's a little way off yet.
Yeah, I think we're definitely still working on, and the immediate future is about finalising our governance and our resourcing plan, and that, you know, just reiterating that it's going to take some more time before, you know, we're actually ready for action, and that this sort of work is just how, or becomes part of how Bundaberg works. Like if you're, you know, recruiting or whatever in Bundaberg, then this is how you want to do it. So yeah.
And I think that if we had skipped a lot of this foundational stuff and gone straight into, you know, well, what are the activities we want to do? What's the projects we want to implement because, you know, we've got funding or what have you, we'd be redoing it, everything again, because you wouldn't have had the grounded relationships and trust that we've been building, and we will continue to build for the next, you know, 12 months, because it gives you real clarity and staying power, I think, at a community level.
Yeah, and if you're just starting out, don't estimate the power of just taking your time, going slow, building those relationships with purpose. And it might feel slow, particularly if you're someone who likes to move into action straight away, but you have to stop yourself and go, okay, is everyone on the same page? And when someone new comes in, or you find someone who, you know, would be a great part of your team, then it's about, well, going back to the beginning with them too. So, you know, going through that whole process again with them. So yeah, it's a strength to take it slow, I think.
Great. Now, I was recently in Bundaberg and caught up with Gayle, and she's also been writing on about Bob and the backbone. Tell me about Bob and the backbone.
You can talk about Bob, can't you?
So in our last meeting, one of the activities that we did was building out, well, what is the structure of our group, or what's the framework our group should, what should it look like? So Angela had shared a number of different frameworks that could possibly work, and we kind of broke up into separate groups, and the group that Angela was with a couple of other members, they came up with a bit of a structure that kind of took a piece from one, you know, governance framework and something from something else, and they came up with this acronym BOB, which was called the backbone of Bundaberg, and it really is about the actual structure of the group, or the methodology and the work and how it actually happens in Bundaberg. And so that's an example of how that participatory approach, where that comes from, and how getting each of the members involved in that. You know, they created that, and it's about the process. You know, you can bring people together for a meeting, but if everyone's just sitting around the table and not contributing or not being actively involved, then they don't feel like they've left with having a say or having their input being valued. And for us, it's about having that, but actually we're learning, you know, we're building the plane as it's flying. We're continuing, you know, to ride this wave, and we're just figuring it out as we go, but we're involving those that want to be involved.
And do you think the group you formed could look at any, you know, so it's coming around a workforce challenges or skilled workforce challenges that need newcomers, but could it be about anything with that group that is systemic problems in your community? Or you could use the same process with a different group for different problems. I'm just interested.
Well, we've used this process many times with many groups. And, you know, some of those groups are still running today with and without our contribution. And so I definitely think that the process itself holds real value in building close relationships and trust with, creating a change at a community level and community-led change. And Angela's been involved with many, many, many different groups using this process for probably 15 years, or adaptations of this process. I think that over the time we've got better at using it.
And you learn new processes, or you adapt different ways, or
so this group's quite sort of senior and systematic, and this sort of has a kind of broad view and a lot of experience around different sectors in Bundaberg. So do you think we could say, here's a workforce lens, but it could be a different lens that you put across it, and ask them to come together and find solutions that work for your community on that issue?
Yeah, I think that as long as there's that shared purpose in place, then those individuals, those leaders are really giving their skills and their time and their experience to help solve whatever the problems are. And I think that as long as there's a shared purpose amongst those members, then you'll get that level of change and thinking that they can then implement on any lens.
Okay. And the ones that were on the broader circle, who did original expressions of interest, how did you manage their expectations and going forward with a smaller group?
I just either emailed or met with them or called them and just said, that I actually just explained the process of, and I have a diagram that we use, that we've got a core group, and then we've got essential stakeholders, and then we've got another layer which I can't remember the name of it, but and this is where I see you. The input, the valuable contribution, it's flexible. That's where I see you sitting. And at different times, they'll get closer to the core group and then they'll spring out again. It just depends on what's happening. And it also depends on what their availability is and what their contribution is. And because some of those people who came to that first meeting, not all of them wanted to come back to the second or third meeting. So we also had to manage our own expectations around that.
And I assume the way you're working, it's all face-to-face?
Yeah, so we do have, for those meetings, people can dial in. It is, I think it's more valuable. You feel more, you're able to participate more when you're in the room with us.
There's just additional things that we would do when we have people online to make sure that they feel like they're not just sitting there listening. So, we would have to manage, when we want to do group work, to make sure that they're getting the best of that experience, that sort of thing. So we would prefer people to be in the room, but understand when people can't be.
You've got a group of senior leaders. Is getting them in a room a challenge? And what are your tips and tricks for timing and getting senior leaders in a room face to face?
I think the big thing is, and this comes all back to the foundation work, is people don't want to not be in the room. And so it's building that level of relationship, so that if you're local in Bundaberg, then you don't want to not be here for that meeting. And it's the same time every month. They've consistently got that block of time booked out for this meeting. It's in the same location. And for those that aren't local, then we have that option of, you know, dialing in like yourself, and like the PHN. And we really haven't come up against people, particularly those people who are really vested and interested in this. Oops, I was just getting
All
a
right.
call. Who are really vested and interested in this process, that they want to be here. They want to be a part of this discussion. This is actually really meaningful for them. And so,
and I think that comes back to, like you said, Gail, it's at the foundation. We didn't go ahead and make any decisions without involving that group. So everyone who's coming in that room now has been here since the beginning. So if someone new enters, like I said before, you have to go back to the beginning with them and allow them the same opportunity so that they feel invested and that they do feel like, well, I can't not be in the room because I'm part of this process.
And would you do that as part of an onboarding process and then introducing them into the group? How would you go about that?
I've not thought about it like that. Not thought about it like an onboarding, but I suppose it is, isn't it? Yeah, I would, like Gail would do those lead-in conversations, and then once they come to their first meeting, we would do a lot of there would be relationship building. So if we had a specific agenda that we were going to be working on that meeting, the participatory processes we use would be really relationship based, so that that person can then start building those relationships and we can build with them straight away. We might look at just different ways of doing the things that we might have done in that meeting, and bring back more, you know, trios, or bring back more pair work. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And my last question, when I was in Bundaberg last week, I was at a disaster planning meeting, and there was a very high level of workforce shortage understanding that surprised me, how articulated it was. There were elements of social connection and belonging that aren't always discussed. What have you been doing out there that is appearing in, you know, that it was not a workforce meeting at all, but it was all over the planning process and the challenges that would be facing Bundaberg in the future under a disaster scenario?
Well, I don't think it's just us, but there's, you know, there is this real great understanding of, it takes, you know, we've been working on this pretty much since we launched our magazine back in 2023. We've been on this, you know, it's not just about a workforce plan for the region. It's actually about all of these things, and using that research and, you know, writing lots of different articles and sharing them and going and turning up to all of these different meetings and constantly talking about, you know, until you're blue in the face that you think that you can't talk about it anymore. And then eventually someone will be like, oh yeah. And, you know, the penny drops, even though you've been talking about it for 2 years already. And it's not just the work that we've been doing. So we're, you know, Bundaberg's full of these really great champions, I think. And so then it's, you know, those other people are having those conversations as well. And yeah, workforce is a major issue that a lot of our community members, leaders, organisations, businesses are struggling with every day. So they know that they need to do something, and they need to do something differently. And, you know, that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Right. Yeah, I came home and said, rich in social capital. There are many Gales in that town. I would go, that's the number one. You need to find your rural leaders, and then you need to learn how to work a strategy or a way of working to collaboratively on these gnarly, wicked problems. And workforce is one, but it's not the only one facing all of us. So great work. Let's all keep an eye out